As some of you know, I caught this particular fundy atheist last week plagiarizing most of his postings from another source. But since these points make for some good teachable moments, I figured I'd do a little something on his claims too. To begin, there's a couple of claims in there that seem to have come out of thin air. He refers to the biggest ethical shakeup of Seneca's time as a reason for Seneca to mention Jesus. Well, I don't know where anyone gets that idea. In reality, no one thinks Jesus was composing any sort of major ethical shakeup. The majority of his moral teachings, in fact, reaffirm some of the best to be found from Jewish morals of the day. Oh, to be sure, there's a few refinements here and there, and a few cases where Jesus ups the ante of strictness on some things then current in Jewish moral thought. But none of this was powerful enough to be called the biggest ethical shakeup of Seneca's time. And the oddity, of course, is that if you point this out, fundy atheists will then say Jesus stole his moral teachings from some other source. Then there's the claim that it's said that Christianity was supposedly spreading like wildfire throughout the Roman Empire. Well, again, no. As argued in books like Rodney Stark's Rise of Christianity, Christian growth was hardly wildfire level. I know of no one who thinks it was, not on this side of scholarship anyway. Oh sure, its missionaries covered a lot of territory in their time, and there was an impressive initial growth spurt, but that's not the same thing as gaining converts numerically in proportion to their exertions. Our fundy atheist also asks about no mention of the Star of Bethlehem or the quakes in Jerusalem. I won't say much on that because we covered that sort of thing in this series on biblical silence. I mentioned the quakes in one of them, but not the Star of Bethlehem. The same arguments would pretty much apply to that Star of Bethlehem, though I would add that it's not necessary to see any supernatural aspects to that. But I'll save that for a vid around Christmas sometime. The last claim we'll treat is that in a work titled On Superstition, the Roman philosopher Seneca allegedly lambasts every known religion including Judaism, but doesn't mention Christianity. What isn't mentioned here is that we don't have this particular work of Seneca available to us today. This particular claim is based on a reference to the work by St. Augustine in his City of God, Book 6, Parts 10 and 11. I'll put a link in the vid description so you can see it for yourself. And what you'll find is that yes, Augustine does say Seneca mentions the Jews and not the Christians. But you'll also find that there's no sign that he lambasts every religion otherwise, as in every religion by name. Oh, you'll find that Augustine quotes some general sentiments about things like the worship of idols and self-mutilation, but nothing to indicate that Seneca was engaged in a virtual cataloging critique of every religion of his time by name. So why didn't Seneca mention Christians? Augustine gives his own explanation for why, and while some critics might claim he's making excuses, his reasoning is at least partly sound. He says that maybe Seneca didn't praise Christians because he should do so against the ancient custom of his country. In that regard, Seneca would reflect the custom of his day that anything that was new was pretty much automatically bad. Or as the scholar Robert Wilkin put it in The Christians as the Romans Saw Them, Roman literature told us that the primary test of truth in religious matters was custom and tradition, the practices of the ancients. This was a big sticking point for Christianity because it could only trace its roots back to a recent founder. Christians were regarded as arrogant innovators, and that's a very good reason why Seneca might decline to mention Christians. And of course that also relates to a point we made in this vid in the Biblical Silence series, about how silence was used to shame, or prevent honor to, deviant persons or movements. Augustine's suggestion about blame is not as good in this regard. But there's also another possible reason why Seneca might not have mentioned Christians. In Seneca's time, the Romans simply viewed Christianity as a Jewish sect, which means that Seneca may have figured he had them covered under that category. Again, we can't really say since we don't have this work available to us, and so we certainly don't know if he critiqued every Jewish sect by name.